Welcome back and welcome to another movie reviews video. I make movie reviews here on this channel every Sunday. They are always spoiler free and I leave timestamps in the description box below so you can scroll to the particular movie you want to hear my thoughts on. I will leave last week's movie reviews linked up here in case there is something there that you are considering seeing in cinemas this week. I only actually saw one movie in cinemas this week, but I am also going to talk about the two Oscar nominated Best Picture movies that I watched on Netflix this week because having a broken toe and not driving means that I haven't been to the cinema, but I have had time to catch up with some Netflix, so that has been good. The one film that I saw in cinemas this week, because somebody took me with them to go and see it and brought me back again, was Parasite, which is also nominated for Best Picture, Best Foreign Language Film, and 4 other Oscars. It's nominated for 6 Oscars. I hadn't seen this one yet. I am probably going to see it again as part of the Best Picture showcase at Regal. But overall, I really enjoyed this one. It was very clever, and I was worried that it was going to be really scary because the trailer makes it look really scary. But if you're worried about going to see it by yourself or worried about taking someone to see it who is not a fan of kind of horror thriller films, it wasn't too scary. You can rest assured it was not too scary. The kind of structure of it reminded me just a little bit of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like a very like slow build, like building and building and building and building, and then culminating in these final kind of like 2 or 3 scenes. So if you like that kind of movie, then I think you will like Parasite. It also reminded me a little bit of a film that was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film last year called Shoplifters, that really blew me away. I was kind of going into it thinking, oh, I'm not sure how this is going to be, and then went to see it, and it's a kind of people trying to make their lives and themselves a little bit better. And this one features characters that you would kind of describe as those like lovable rogue type characters, where you know that what they're doing is wrong and you really should be against what they're doing, but you can't help but admire their tenacity and admire their kind of ability to get it done in a way. And that film definitely has this. It made me laugh a lot more than a film I saw last week, Like a Boss, which made me laugh once. This film made me laugh more than once. And it is being marketed as kind of a dark comedy, but with a kind of psychological thriller side to it or aspect to it. I don't know how you would describe it, but yeah, it is one of those films that's very hard to describe, and you can't really talk to somebody about it until they've seen it too, because there's so many things to dissect and unpick in the storyline. I think it'll definitely benefit from another viewing, and I will definitely talk to you a little bit more about it once I've watched it again. Then the next ones I'm going to talk about aren't ones that I saw in the cinema, so if you are leaving us here at this point, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and if you are staying, here are my thoughts on The Irishman and Marriage Story. The Irishman is the first one that I watched, and obviously watching the 100 best IMDb movies, which if you haven't seen that video, I'll link it up here, meant that I watched The Godfather Parts 1 and 2, Once Upon a Time in America, and Goodfellas. There were a couple more films on the list that were slightly similar to The Irishman and had the same people in it as The Irishman, but so I kind of felt like I was a little bit more knowledgeable going into it because I've watched those films quite recently. But overall, I thought that it was a good storyline because it had Robert De Niro narrating it the entire way through. So quite often with films that involve like mob bosses and gangs and things like that, like Gotti a couple of years ago, I struggled to follow who is who and how they're all connected to each other. But this one, we had Robert De Niro narrating it, and then we also had flashes of things on the screen that explained who somebody was, and then it kind of gives you their like death story as well. So like if they died of a heart attack age 82 in 1980 or whatever, it tells you that as well, which I thought was really good and I really appreciated, because something that I struggle with those kind of films is keeping track of who's who and how they're all connected and how they relate to the storyline. So I found that really helpful. The CGI and the like reverse aging thing, which has been talked about a lot in this film, I thought wasn't the best. Like when we look at Robert De Niro, you kind of, his eyes just look a bit weird and his cheeks look a bit weird, and I watched this with Ollie and he said, yeah, it's a bit like Polar Express, where it's that kind of like half real, half animated thing. And I think a lot of the times I saw Joe Pesci in his like younger form, I felt like he was a little bit animated, which, as you know, if you've watched my sort of least favourite films, is the issue that I had when I went to see Aquaman. The CGI just felt too animated, and when you compared it to things like Star Wars and Avengers and stuff, it just didn't feel that way. So some of the Oscars that it has been nominated for, I feel that it really doesn't deserve. Some of the acting Oscars as well, when you compare them to some of the other films on the long list for the acting Oscars, I feel like these people have only been nominated for these Oscars because of who they are and because of their legacy, which I get that happens with Oscar nominations. You know, we could talk about all those female directors that lost out, but enough said about that. Better, I will talk about that a little bit more in my Oscars week movies. But yeah, it was decent and it was enjoyable. I felt like going into it, I was intimidated by the length of it because it's well over 3 hours. However, it didn't feel like a super long film going into it. Not the same way that Once Upon a Time in America does, which of course is like 3 hours 45 minutes, or if you get the director's version, it's like 4 hours 11 minutes. But it didn't feel long like that because there was kind of always something happening. It wasn't like long periods of time where you just kind of saw people walking around, or you know, you had music playing over shots of New York or whatever. So I felt like there was always stuff going on, and I did enjoy it. Like I felt like I enjoyed it more than some of the other, you know, Godfather-esque films that I've seen. But I'm not entirely sure why it's got nominated for all the awards that it's got nominated for. I think that there are other films and other people who deserve those nominations more, but then that's just my opinion. And then the other Oscar nominated film that is on Netflix that I had not seen was Marriage Story, and I hadn't seen this because I put it on my list when I knew it was coming and I was excited for watching it, but I was really worried about how kind of distressing or upsetting it was going to be because of just the nature of the story. It's about two people who are splitting up and trying to do so whilst keeping it amicable and also whilst trying to look out for the best interests of their child. I really love seeing Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson on screen. I like a lot of the films that they have been in. I love Girls, and part of the reason I love the TV series Girls is because of Adam Driver in it. And so I knew I wanted to watch it because of them. And I was worried that it was going to be upsetting kind of watching them split up as well, but actually, because of the way it's written and shot and directed and edited, I think they did a really good job. I didn't cry extensively. I cried twice, and I kind of cried at the ending. Well, I suppose I cried once and cried at the ending, just because you kind of get in this intense emotional engagement with them. I think the fact that I'm not a massive fan of Laura Dern helped me cry less, because when she was on screen, I was a bit like, oh. And I know that I'm probably quite alone in not being a massive fan of Laura Dern. I just don't like the stuff that she's in. Like, I hated her part in Star Wars. And I thought that Susan Sarandon was a much better Marmee than she was in Little Women. She could have come back and reprised her role, but there you go. That's my opinion. But yeah, I really enjoyed Marriage Story. I thought it was really, really good. I thought that the leads did an amazing job. I thought it was really well written and really well like put together, so that you got this intense emotion the entire way through, but you weren't just like feeling down the entire way through. There was happy moments, and I just felt like you were going through all the different emotions with them. And I really liked the way it was shot, so it wasn't like, oh, 3 months later, or oh, 2 weeks later. It was just like you caught up with them as they went along. With Adam Driver flying back and forth between New York and LA, you kind of got that time period with him as well. So I thought it was really, really good, and I really enjoyed it. And I will have some more to say about the categories that it is nominated in when I have my Oscars week videos for you, which will be starting next week. That's very exciting. I will have more movie reviews for you next Sunday, but starting next Monday, which is the 3rd February, I will have my films in all the categories discussed, and my opinions and my thoughts and my picks, which I do as much for me. Like last year's did not get many views at all, but I really enjoyed making them, so I'm going to be making them again this year. Why not? Thank you so much for watching this video. As always, if there is a particular movie that's out right now in the cinema that you want to hear my thoughts on, leave me a comment and let me know. And let me know what kind of you are excited about in terms of Oscars buzz as well. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Make sure that you are subscribed. I have 3 bookish videos for you coming up this week, and then movie reviews next Sunday, and of course those Oscar week videos the week after, so you are not going to want to miss them. I will be back with more bookish content for you in the week, so I will see you then. Bye.